Welcome, builders of the internet. My name is Jessa and I work in construction, and today I thought I would talk about classroom design, how it can have an impact on students, and which layouts are better for keeping students engaged in their lessons. As always, you can find my timestamps and sources in the description.
Is building on my mind.
What are the most common classroom layouts? Traditional. The traditional classroom layout is rows and columns of students all in line with each other, where they're all facing the front of the classroom. Individual desks have their backs to those in the rows behind them, which is a pretty common layout in colleges and universities, and it minimises the amount of students that interact with each other because they're all seated relatively spaced out. Most of the interaction that does happen in these sorts of classrooms is between the teachers or the professors and those who are sitting in the rows closer to the front. When people are sat in rows, it can instigate more academic behaviours, such as hand raising before saying something, and there is a tendency for people to comply with the teacher's requests a little bit more, which makes it pretty effective for independent work or when people are assigned to do tasks to complete on their own. Having people seated in rows and columns is also pretty efficient, where you can fit more people in a given space. However, a consideration with this layout is that there is essentially a line or a barrier between the teacher and the students. You have the teacher in the space at the front, but they'll rarely integrate or directly interact with students seated further back in the less accessible spaces. This physical barrier actually has shown to result in a psychological separation, where some students didn't feel as respected and valued in these classroom layouts. Numerous studies have also shown that this layout, which encourages learning by just passively listening to what the teacher has to say, is actually a less effective way of learning compared to actively learning through, say, group work or interaction with question responses and so on. Circular or U-shaped. To counteract some of these issues with the traditional format, there could be a single large table in the centre in the round table format, which is seen in some rooms for seminars or courses where everyone faces each other in this circular seating arrangement. This is a good way to get people to interact as a group and to feel like they are more equally contributing to the outcome of the class. But as you can probably imagine, having one circle where people can sit in a classroom really limits how many people can actually come to the class. There are some modified and arguably more refined versions of the round table, namely the horseshoe and the double horseshoe. In the horseshoe layout, the students face each other, and the opening at the front means that the teacher has a little bit more flexibility to move around the room. In this layout, the instructor tends to talk most with the people that are directly opposite them, who are in their line of sight, rather than those who are directly next to them or less visible at the sides. In the double horseshoe, there is an inner and an outer row in horseshoe shapes, so those in the front row have their backs facing the outer row. With there being more people sitting next to each other, there is still relatively easy interaction between people who are close by. And with these gaps in the front of the class, instructors frequently and actively moved around more, which helps students feel more comfortable and ready to engage. Because these horseshoe configurations removed the spatial barrier between the instructor and the students, it actually improved students' motivation to learn in some cases. Other advantages of this U-shaped seating is that students can still see the front of the class pretty easily, say if there's a whiteboard or a projector screen to look out for, and it is a great way of encouraging discussions between the students and the teacher. However, the disadvantages to these layouts is that they take up quite a lot of space, so it can be more practical to have this double horseshoe layout. But with this configuration, it means that teachers tend to find that students turn around and talk a lot with their peers behind them. Those in the outer part of the horseshoe also find it difficult to engage and interact with the teacher, though a slight separation in the centre of the class can actually help with this. Pods. The last typical classroom layout is in pods, where tables are arranged to let people sit either in pairs or groups. These groups could be there to allow maybe 4 or 6 people to sit together, and I remember that I had a lot of classrooms like this, especially when I was in primary school, so between the ages of about 4 to 11. This arrangement is so helpful to get people to work in groups or with the people next to them, which is useful for classes where people are encouraged to work with each other. It is pretty useful for brainstorming, as well as helping develop students' social opportunities and their ability to work in groups, and the teacher tends to have a more facilitative or indirect role in the classroom. Putting a lot of tables bunched together is also pretty effective for saving space compared to the horseshoe or the round table layouts. The disadvantage to having clumps of tables together is that it can be a bit more difficult to control the classroom. Not everyone has a good view of the front of the class, where the teacher might be standing, and because everybody is seated pretty close together, talking and just general chit-chat can be a little bit of a problem for some teachers, especially where lots of friends sit in close proximity with each other. The ideal classroom. The way a classroom layout affects the students and how they respond will depend on many factors, such as what the teacher's goals and intentions are, say how much they want people to work together or to actually just listen to what they're saying in a more authoritative role. Other factors include the personalities of the students, how close and friendly they are with their peers, the available facilities, and so many more. According to one study, a strong consideration that teachers had was to separate the students that tended to behave poorly in class, followed by academic diversity and promoting new friendships. They have a lot of other factors to consider too, such as hearing or seeing problems, height differences, placing friends or people of similar academic capacity close to each other, or trying to encourage the most peace in the classroom. Often what ends up being the final decision comes down to the teacher's own beliefs about what teaching and learning means to them. Say, how much they value the social side of school compared to the academic side, or how much they want to control the class or encourage collaborative interaction. Aside from the way students sit, it is also worth thinking about the nature of the room itself. Students who are exposed to more natural light from windows compared to artificial lights inside tend to perform better in mathematics and reading compared to the students that are exposed to less natural light. However, you should bear in mind that too much glare and exposure to the sun can cause visual discomfort and unwanted temperature increases. In fact, the optimal temperature to learn at is about 20 to 23 degrees Celsius or 68 to 74 degrees Fahrenheit. If there are windows that can open in the classroom, this can help regulate the temperature, as well as increasing the air quality by getting fresh air to circulate. Better air quality increased students' attendance, as well as helping the teacher's ability to educate their students. Though it should be said that if there is too much external noise from the outside via, say, traffic or planes or heard through corridors, it tends to reflect in overall student achievement, where greater external noise correlates with lower student achievement, particularly on reading comprehension exercises. Another consideration is the types of furniture used. When there are smaller desks, say with the capacity for 2 people, it can mean a lot more flexibility overall to arrange in, say, pairs, groups, rows, and so on. If there are chairs that are pretty mobile and can move around, say with wheels or just not being limited by how close together the desks are, this can really help collaboration too. There have been studies that show the effect of swivel chairs for college students, where there is greater flexibility to rotate and speak to the people nearby, which very much promoted face-to-face interaction between students and encouraged collaboration and made it easier for instructors to move to different areas of the classroom to interact with more students. To summarise, there is no singular ideal layout for seating arrangements in classrooms, and different configurations will be better depending on the nature of the class and the type of learning and outcomes that the instructors want. If you're designing a classroom that hasn't been built yet, it's important to make sure that students get enough daylight and access to fresh air through windows where possible, whilst also minimising the potential amount of background noise that they hear, because this is pretty distracting. In most cases, I imagine teachers can't really control how much or little light there is, or even the types of chairs and desks that they're provided with, but the final layouts can have such an effect on student satisfaction and the overall success of the class. For more content to do with buildings, construction and mental health, feel free to check out my other videos, but that's all I have to say for now. I hope it helped build on your mind.
Thanks for watching this channel, it's building on my mind. Check out my other videos, but first hit the bell and comment, like, subscribe. Please, it really helps with the algorithm.